All right, if you're prepping for your exams, you know welfare economics is an absolutely make or break topic. So, in the next few minutes, we're going to break it all down. We'll give you the core concepts you absolutely have to know in a way that's going to stick. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll kick off with the big why. Why do governments even need to get involved? Then we'll look at how we measure success, define what a perfect market even looks like, and then, of course, what happens when it all goes wrong. Let's dive in. So let's start with the most fundamental question of all. Why do we even need economic policy? I mean, if markets are so great, why can't we just leave them alone? This question is really at the heart of everything we're talking about. The short answer, even the most efficient markets aren't always perfect. They can have what we call distortions, imbalances that lead to some pretty bad outcomes. Public policy is essentially the government's toolkit to step in, fix these problems, and boost society's overall well-being, or what we call welfare. Okay, so if the whole goal is to improve welfare, we've got to have a way to measure it, right? But how on earth do you put a number on an entire society's happiness? Well, economists have a tool for this, and it's a concept you will definitely see on your exam: the social welfare function. The social welfare function, or SWF, is basically a mathematical recipe for social happiness. It takes the satisfaction, what economists call utility, of every single person, combines them all, and then spits out a single score for how well society is doing as a whole. Now, this table breaks down the three key approaches you need to know. First up, you've got utilitarianism, which just adds up everyone's happiness. A rupee of joy for a rich person is worth the same as for a poor person. Then, the Bergson-Sidasky view says, hold on, distribution matters. Society values a gain for the poor more than for the rich. And finally, the Rawlsian view is laser-focused on the most vulnerable. It says our one and only goal should be to improve the life of the single worst-off person. And seriously, pay close attention to those curve shapes on the right. They're a direct picture of these philosophies and a classic exam question. All right, so before we can even start talking about market failures, we first need to define what market success looks like. Economists use this theoretical benchmark for a perfectly efficient market, and this ideal state has a name: Pareto optimality. It sounds super complex, I know, but it's actually pretty simple. Imagine you and a friend are at the canteen, trading items from your lunch dabbas. You keep swapping as long as you're both happy with the trade. The second any new trade would make one of you unhappy, you stop. That exact stopping point where no more win-win trades are possible, that's Pareto optimality. And this simple idea, it leads to one of the most powerful theorems in all of economics, the first welfare theorem. It basically says that a competitive market, if you just leave it alone, will naturally find its way to an efficient Pareto optimal outcome. It's Adam Smith's famous invisible hand right there in action. Now, a key tool for visualizing all this is the Edgeworth box. We won't draw one from scratch right now, but just imagine a box that maps out a tiny economy with just two people and two goods. It helps us track all the possible trades they could make, starting from what they each have in the beginning, their endowments. And within that Edgeworth box, there's a line that connects every single one of those efficient stopping points. This line is called the contract curve. You have to remember that term. It represents the set of all possible efficient outcomes after every last win-win trade has been made. But hold on, here's the catch. Just because an outcome is efficient, does that automatically make it fair? I mean, what if one person ends up with almost everything and the other with almost nothing? This brings us to the huge debate between efficiency and equity. So to explore this trade-off, economists use something called the utility possibility frontier, or UPF. Think of it like this. You take all those efficient points from the contract curve and just plot them on a new graph showing the happiness level of person A versus person B. It gives you a perfect visual of the trade-off. To make one person happier, the other has to become a little less happy. And this right here leads us to the second welfare theorem, which is where policy gets really interesting. It says that if we don't like the market's outcome, even if it's efficient, we're not stuck with it. The government can step in with tools like taxes and subsidies, change who starts with what, and then let the market work its magic to reach a new efficient outcome that society might see as more fair. But okay, how do we actually judge if a policy that helps some folks but hurts others is a good idea? To answer that, you've got to remember three names: Kaldor, Hicks, and Sitatowski. Their compensation principles are basically tests. For example, Kaldor's test asks, could the winners of a policy change afford to pay off the losers and still be better off? If the answer is yes, maybe the policy is a net positive. These names are key for your exam. But listen, here's the huge catch. the critical weakness you absolutely have to remember for any analytical question. These principles are all theoretical. They say the winners could compensate the losers, but there is absolutely no guarantee that this compensation actually happens in the real world. All right, let's get back to the real world. Because let's be honest, it's not a perfect textbook model, right? So what happens when all those assumptions of a perfect market just break down? Well, this is what we call market failure. Now, to absolutely crush this section in your exam, I've got a simple mnemonic for you. Just remember this phrase, My Perfect Exam Info. It stands for the 4 main types of market failure: monopoly, public goods, externalities, and imperfect information.
This table right here, this is exam gold. Let's quickly run through our mnemonic. M is for monopoly. Think of a single seller like Indian Railways. P is for public goods like national defense, where you get that free rider problem. E is for externalities, with the classic example being pollution from factories. And I is for imperfect information, which is exactly why we need regulators like the IRDAI in the insurance market. For each one, you can see the problem, the policy fix, and a real Indian example.
All right, let's pull it all together for one final super fast recap. If you remember nothing else from this, remember what's coming up next. Seriously, pause and take a screenshot of this slide. These are the absolute core concepts we've covered. From the social welfare function all the way to the causes of market failure, if you can confidently explain every single one of these points, you are in fantastic shape for your exam. And hey, just to leave you with one final thought to chew on for your deeper studies. We've spent all this time talking about how government policy can fix market failures, but that opens up a whole new and equally important area of study on government failure. What happens when the solution itself has problems? Something to think about for your next study session. Good luck.